Hello and welcome to the Leaders Podcast with me, Kishore Rajendran. And today I have with me Robin Denton, who's a sales manager for local government and housing associations at Microsoft. Robin, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. Please could you introduce yourself briefly for our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Kishore. So, my name is Robin Denton. I am the sales director at Microsoft, responsible for local government housing associations, and I also have some remit with fire as well.
Thank you, Robin. Robin, I would like to just start off our discussion focusing on social housing and adult care. So we know that social housing and adult care is one of the key areas which councils support with. However, as someone that works in the technology industry, what does social housing mean to an organization such as Microsoft? And how can a technology company support councils and frontline carers?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Kishore. I think, firstly, let's start off with what does it mean to an organisation like Microsoft? And I'll give you a slightly different answer than maybe one you would expect here. But if you look at the people who work in the local government team and the people who work generally in public sector, actually, most of us work in the sector because we want to make a difference and we want to help improve people's quality of lives at the end of what we're doing. That's really important to us. And actually, when you look at an area such as social care and indeed kind of housing for individuals, be that individuals who are dependent upon certain support networks that social housing can give, certain types of home that social housing can give, whether that's going into care. Actually, for us to be able to support a local authority or indeed a housing association in providing the right type of care packages to that individual is hugely important and hugely rewarding. I think for us as an organisation, our goal is to empower every person on the planet to do more. And that's a big, fluffy marketing frame. But actually, when you bring that down to its local level, it's hugely powerful because what we want to do is empower that resident who requires a degree of care or a degree of support to be able to live their best life. And we can only do that if we're working closely with a local authority or with a housing association to understand the needs of those residents and how we can help to support them. So I think, firstly, that's kind of what it means. If you think about our core mission, we're bringing that down in a local government, in a social care, in a social housing context. So that's first and foremost. I think, secondly, how can technology companies support councils and frontline carers? There is so much that we can do there that I think is really, really powerful. And it can start from the simple stuff. How can we enable a frontline carer to be, more online and better in contact at all given times with their back office? How can we give them access to the right information when they're trying to make a decision on a potential individual at any given moment so that they always have that information to hand? It could be helping to streamline the process. If you think about the process that someone has to go through to get into care or get the right package around them, that can be really elongated. And for the end individual, the person who needs that help, that can be hugely frustrating and hugely stressful. So if we can leverage the right types of technology to help make decisions faster, to help the process move faster, and to help that individual get the care they need faster, that's really, really powerful. And I think that the technologies that we can bring to a local authority, everything from allowing them to better understand the data to make a real-time decision, through to process and flow automation, through to robotic process automation, where we can even take potential stages of that process out where it's a human intervention with a bot, can be massively powerful. So you think about it from that angle, really, really interesting. The other side to it that I like to think about is two elements. Firstly, you think about how do you marry up the right care package with the right individual, and to a degree, how do you give them control of their care budget to give a bit of flex around what they need to spend that budget on. And there's quite a lot that we can do there in terms of how do we marry up, someone's needs and requirements and match those needs and requirements with the right care provider who offers the right care package. How can we identify where there are care black spots and help to fill that through, other organisations or charities that might be running locally? We're doing an awful lot in that space. You think about all of those elements, and actually, there's a really robust story that we can help to facilitate for care. So there's all of those angles, and then of course the final angle is when someone is actually in that care scenario, that might be being put into a social housing environment where they have certain facilities within that home. How is it we can really enrich that? How can we give that citizen a better quality of life through technology supporting? And that could be through voice assistance, that could be through things like having alerts for movement and whatnot, so that if someone has a fall, for example, obviously some a carer can be notified, next of kin can be notified, so that they can go and take action far more effectively than maybe having someone on the floor for a while because they weren't wearing their old pendant, with the panic button that is so common historically. So there is a lot there that we can start doing, and it's across the entire spectrum of what is it, a social care team, a social housing organisation is trying to deliver, and it really marries back to what is the need of that citizen. So I think there's tons that we can do there, and we are hugely passionate about how we can deliver that into social care and social housing.
Absolutely, and there's quite a lot of things you mentioned there, which also in a previous interview, Zane Freem from Microsoft also shared how we can help frontline workers more specifically. So if any viewers would like to catch up on that podcast, please do take a look at the playlist and you'll be able to watch that interview with Zane Freem, who's a modern workplace lead for local government and housing. But Robin, you touched on data quite a lot in your answer. As well as other topics such as robotic process automation and low-code apps and so on. But if we focus on data, data is becoming more and more important in our current world that we live in. And data partly is what's fueling digital transformation, one could argue. What value do you think data adds to an organization, irrelevant of which sector the organization is in?
It's huge value, absolutely huge value, and you can put whatever sector lens on it you want to. I mean, my background obviously is more local government, housing association based, so I'll try and kind of frame it in that light. But the same is true for commercial organisations wanting to understand their customer base. The same is true for them wanting to understand their logistics network, their supply chain. Everything like that. The concepts are all the same, but when you think about data, it's hugely important. If you look at a local authority, I talk about this quite a lot at the moment, they are so data rich at the moment, but the problem is where it's contained and how siloed potentially it still is. You have data around, if you think about it, every street that's, within a county, that's managed by the local authority. So they have all that street data, they have all that street furniture data, they have all of that data that they can start gathering around how is traffic flows moving. They have data around buildings that are, in the borough potentially, all of the plans that have come through their planning cycles. They have got information about the residents who are living in that environment. They know demographic data, they know health data, they know education data, they know data around the family nucleus. You have got data sets that people are gathering around what's going on with air quality, what's going on with emissions. What else do we need to factor in there? We've got data around things like what's the power network look like? How are we going to move to electronic vehicle charging points? Stuff like that. So you think about this massive plethora of data that are in all these different siloed locations. There is so much power in being able to bring that together, and almost thinking about again, I'm talking about councils here, but thinking about that brain, that nucleus that says, here's all the signals that are coming in that we have about individuals. Here are all the requests that they are putting in on us. Here's everything we understand about the environment that they live in. Here's everything that is coming in, around, physical environments that they're living in. Here's everything around all the businesses that are operating in the area, the charities that are operating in the area, the social enterprises that are operating in the area. And when you start pulling all of that data together, the opportunities are massive for a local authority. Thinking about everything from, obviously at the moment in the middle of a pandemic, there's a lot of thought about what's recovery going to look like. How are we going to get back out of this? How are we going to alter the way our environment works as people come back to work? How are we going to change travel behaviours? How do we continue to provide care through these pandemics? What is the long-term impact of that? What do we need to plan for next? All of that is data-led. And where it gets really interesting, really powerful is when you think about what's happened historically. People would have reports on outputs of things that had happened. And now people are kind of getting to, right, we need to understand why that happened. But actually where we want to get to is, what does the predictive look like? If you start thinking about a recovery, what are the different variables that we might want to be thinking about and altering to help that recovery? How is it we might want our region to operate differently from the types of business we want to support in the area, the way people travel in the area? How are we going to be driving out digital skills to try and create more of a digital economy in the area? All of that, is kind of like, right, if we do these things, what might be the potential output of doing that? And I think that is hugely powerful. That idea of having a council brain, if you like, where you have all these signals coming in, where you can identify things between them, you can look for patterns, you can spot trends, you can start intervening earlier, you can better plan. I think all of those things are really powerful. And it is all about data. Data is an absolute goldmine for a local authority in terms of how they want to operate moving forwards, how they want to provide better services, how they want to become more efficient, how they want to attract different types of business to an area. It really is very powerful stuff.
And absolutely. And you mentioned some key words there, Robin, signals and also outputs from the data. Now, one of the challenges which a lot of organizations are facing, councils and housing associations, is understanding how they can take the data that they have today. So there'll be new data coming in through various sensors, but data they have today, which typically would be unstructured in majority of the scenarios. And most of the times it would be on a non-digital format, for example, on a piece of paper, which is not indexed as a result. With an organization that has a complexity in order to resolve before they can actually start generating those outputs, what would your guidance be for them to focus on right now to get started on that journey, for them to resolve some of the problems we may have, whether that's unstructured data, whether that's data on a non-digital format, or any of the other problems that an organization may face?
I think it's about thinking about the bimodal approach, if you like. I talked earlier a little bit about council brain, and that's just kind of something that I have in my thought process at the moment. But if you start thinking about what that could look like in its entirety, that's a big, scary project that is probably, if you tried to do it in one go, fairly unattainable, quite problematic in how you would get there. But I think the key bit of advice I would give is have a think about what that could look like in the medium to long term, and be thinking about what are the things you can do to start fast, that start you on that journey, but always have that end kind of view in mind, because what you want to be making now are decisions that enable that vision, right? And that is really, really important. Thinking about where the end goal here is in terms of what your different projects are that you are looking at spinning up. That might be a project around social care data, that might be a project around housing data, that might be a project around, we've got projects around things like, gritting roads, and whether you should be gritting roads based on, the environmental factors. But the reality is that's all data. So it's all about data coming in from a source. Could be unstructured, could be a sensor, could be structured data that you've got from a system somewhere. But whatever it is, you want to think about how that core is going to operate in a way that is very consistent around multiple different data workloads and data ingestion points. You want to have that really common framework there. So the more you put into it, you have a common methodology in place where you can really start accessing that data in new and exciting ways. So for me, it's thinking about, in the medium to long term, what is it we're trying to do here? But how do we do things where we can start fast? We can fail fast, actually, if we want to try a project and it just doesn't work. Actually, it's low cost. It's been relatively simple for us to stand up and then walk back from because it hasn't delivered what we expect. But the core here is, how does that common framework in the middle operate? That's going to give you value across multiple different streams, multiple different exam questions over time, and give you that platform and that framework for what you want to do in the future.
Absolutely. And I, for one, I'm very keen on how we can use data to fix potholes in the road. It's one thing that that I'd love to see data being useful. But Robin, I think just switching sectors briefly and focusing on the housing sector. We're seeing incredible transformation within the housing industry, and if we focus on housing associations more specifically. I believe that housing associations are just in the infancy of the very large transformation over the next a number of years. What recommendations would you suggest to a senior decision maker, whether that be a CIO, a CFO, or a security officer, to invest on today as part of their strategic vision to ensure a successful future for their organization?
Yeah, I think housing is one of the most exciting marketplaces that there is at the moment, because there is so much potential for how you deliver really high quality services to the residents in those properties. For me, there are a few different angles that I think are really important. Fundamentally, when you think about housing associations, their core remit is to provide high quality living standards to people who are, financially in a more challenging position, and to provide, housing for vulnerable members of society. Now, for me, those individuals deserve as high a quality of life as any of the rest of us, and they should be living in, a well-maintained property that gives them a decent quality of life, that keeps them safe, that keeps them warm, that keeps a roof over their head, but also helps them with things like cost efficacy. The green agenda when it comes to housing stock is really important, because if you can help to make a house really, really efficient, then one of the other vectors that's important for the individual living in that house is how they pay their bills every month. And being able to have a well-ran very, very green, efficient property is going to be really important in giving that individual the quality of life and being able to reduce their outgoings to be able to enjoy a higher quality of life. So, there's a bit of a virtuous circle there. So when I think about, what are the things they can do to, enable a transformation, firstly is, how do you understand what's going on with properties? How do you understand what is in those properties? How do you understand what the maintenance cycles and the maintenance costs of those properties are? How do you budget effectively for them? How do you understand where you do have properties which are old and need some serious work done to them to give a decent quality of life to an individual? And I think those are the types of things that are really important. So firstly is understanding what housing stock looks like and how we provide higher quality housing stock. The second part is understanding the resident. So who is the individual that's living in there? What are their particular needs, and how do we meet those needs? And how do we give them access back into us as a housing association to be raising tickets, raising logs, raising requests, being able to pay their bills, their rent bills, etc., in a timely digital manner. So for me, it's really thinking about what is that digital footprint that allows us to bring together the property, the physical asset, and the management of that asset, in combination with how do we give high quality access to residents and the requests that a resident might need to bring to us. And if we can find a way to bring all of that together, then actually we're in a really strong position to be fulfilling our core mission as a housing association, which is providing affordable properties of a high quality and a high standard to individuals who need support in getting that type of property.
So Dynamics 365 is one of those platforms that is enabling customers to get started on that journey. But Dynamics is not the only platform and technology solutions that customers need to focus on. They have to focus on many other scenarios, and IoT is one of those key areas. Now, we're seeing customers who are just starting to take a look at IoT. What does it mean for their organizations? How do they get started?
Yeah.
And it could be as simple as fitting some sensors, generating data from those sensors, feeding that into a machine learning algorithm to generate a desired output. That output could be to save costs from a maintenance perspective, to predictive maintenance, to reduce the number of repairs that we carry out, to ensure we burn less fuel and release less emissions into the atmosphere, or to improve safety for the residents in those properties. Lots and lots of scenarios to think about when it comes to IoT. In your view, what is the biggest barrier that is stopping organizations from investing and going big with IoT?
I think the biggest barrier at this moment in time is the lack of clarity on the ROI and the business case that comes from it. We're really confident that there is a very, very rich business case, and we obviously have got a number of pilots, which you're engaged in at the moment, Kishore, which are helping to prove that there is a significant ROI from this. But I think because we are in a relatively early stage in that, people almost want to see what that looks like before they look to invest themselves. So firstly, they want to see a little bit around what the ROI looks like from that. But secondly, I think there is a genuine curiosity as to, does it live up to the hype, and does it deliver the higher quality of living standard that we want to achieve from it? What are the benefits it brings out? And I think that is one of the things that is stalling a bit of the progress that we can make here. I think where we're getting to, though, is a really exciting point where, with things like 5G and LoRaWAN becoming far more prevalent and far more accessible, with sensor costs, reducing rapidly as they become more mainstream and easier to produce. I think that we're getting to a point now where actually people can really start coming up with an idea, testing it, trying it out, and going, right, this has got legs and we want to go further, or saying, no, this isn't delivering the type of return we want. And whilst it's not strictly a housing association, I look at the work that Norfolk County Council are doing, and I just think it's brilliant. They are investing in a LoRaWAN network, and they are working with local businesses to say, hey, we've got this idea. We would like you to help us to build out a sensor and do XYZ job. I mean, I love the ones that they've built out where they've put sensors into the side of the road and they're getting real-time road temperature data to decide whether or not they need to grit. I mean, what a great use case. But that came because they set the network up and they wanted to try something and prove a return or fail fast. And I think that's the kind of mentality that we need to start seeing housing associations take is, hey, look, we've got some ideas here as to what we could do with some smart properties. Actually, with Microsoft, we can help you stand up the infrastructure requirements that you need for that really, really quickly. You're leveraging cloud technologies. It's really easy to stand some of these things up now. And actually, with some of these sensors becoming far more accessible and, our partner community becoming so rich in this area now, I think it is easy to go and try things and see whether you can then, stack up that business case or whether it's a fail fast situation. But I think that's the biggest blocker, and I think that we're in a place now where we can help deliver really rich pilots very quickly that you can then say, right, we're going to go with that or not. And actually, I think based on some of the work that we're doing at the moment in high rises and in standard kind of properties, I think we'll start seeing the use cases come out over the next couple of months that will allow us to go really hard after that area of the market. And
absolutely, Robin. And there is so much we can do, as you say, that mindset of just trying ideas, and if we fail, let's fail fast, learn from those failures, and let's do something better the next time.
Yeah.
And any customers watching this podcast, please do reach out to your Microsoft team, and they'll be very happy to guide you through that process, and how we can help you support with those POCs, with our vast array of our partner networks in that space. Now, Robin, very briefly, touching on sustainability, you mentioned sustainability in the previous answer. Microsoft has invested a lot in a sustainability agenda, carbon neutral, carbon negative, wiping out the carbon since inception of the company, reducing water wastage. Very briefly, why is it important for technology companies to lead with sustainability, and how is that going to benefit our customers?
So it's hugely important, right? We only have one planet, and that is almost the be all end all of it. We only have one planet, and at the moment, what we see going on with the environment, with global warming, with polar ice caps, etc., melting, with increases in famine, increases in major weather events. The planet's talking to us. The planet is telling us that this isn't sustainable. And the reality is that every one of us in society has a role to play in helping to improve that situation. Now, when it comes to a tech company like Microsoft, and I don't want this to sound like a big tech arrogant comment. You could do, but a huge number of people in the world rely on our technology sets. They rely on our technology sets, be it because they're sat at home in the evening playing Xbox, be it because they are consuming content that lives somewhere in the Microsoft cloud over the internet, be it that they are doing what we're doing now, having a video call, making contact with each other, having a chat, be it your day-to-day productivity in work, be it running data centers in work, be it any of those things. And the reality is that the amount that people are leveraging Microsoft cloud-based solutions is growing exponentially. Now, our role in society has got to be to give back. It has got to be making those solutions more carbon efficient, making ourselves carbon negative. So actually, by moving to our platforms, you are helping to do your bit for the health of the planet and what each of us is going to leave behind for our children and the next generation. So I think from a moral standpoint, it is hugely important. And I think when you start thinking about it from the perspective of, say, a local authority, you look at how many local authorities there are in the country, and you look at the local authorities who are still running 1, 2, 3, 4 data centers, maybe even more. And you've got to say, hey, is that sustainable? How much energy are you using? How efficient are you at cooling those things? What heat are you putting out? What does your carbon footprint look like off the back of that? Are you really going to do that more efficiently and more effectively than a global scale cloud provider? And if there's a local authority you've declared a carbon emergency, then that has to be a really key consideration to what your strategy is for delivering technology-based services. So I think that it is massively important for us as a society, and I think that it is something that our customer base are becoming increasingly passionate about, wanting to do more around, and actually are really engaging us in a meaningful way, not just to leverage our cloud services and our cloud platforms to be able to say, hey, look, we're doing these things and driving the green agenda for ourselves and the sustainable agenda for ourselves through consuming in that manner, but also from learning from what is it we do as an organization, what more broadly are we investing in from a sustainability perspective, and what is it that we can bring into ourselves as an organization from learning from Microsoft. And I think there's a couple of different angles there that are really important.
Absolutely, and you mentioned a very key thing there, Robin, which is majority of our customers who are not aware of how much emissions they are emitting from their data centers. And in fact, Microsoft has released a tool that allows customers to to calculate that in a fairly accurate manner, which we will add into the description section of this video. Should any viewers like to go and calculate that for your own data centers, and compare that with how a cloud hosting model can actually help benefit you in terms of eradicating or reducing that footprint greatly. Robin, we're almost out of time, but I would like to ask a final question, a personal question to finish off our discussion. You've been in Microsoft for a long time. How many years, if you don't mind me asking?
15 and a half.
So that's a very long time. And you've been extremely successful. So I believe you've won more than 8 awards, including a Circle of Excellence award, which is the highest level of recognition that an employee at Microsoft can achieve. And there's a lot of early in career colleagues that may be watching this video who work within the local government and the housing industries. What has been the recipe for your success since your inception, when you started your job straight after education? What guidance would you provide to early in career students and graduates who are just starting in their careers to adopt to be successful?
Yeah. So my philosophy has always been really simple. I mean, you obviously kind of mentioned the awards and the accolades and stuff. I didn't even realize that there was that many. I guess they're on my LinkedIn profile somewhere, because I do put them on there, but I don't really count them. For me, things like that and successful career progression, etc., all comes not because I set goals of doing those things necessarily. They've all come from the back of being, I'm trying to think what the right terminology is for this, just from the kind of work ethic and the way that I operate. If you look at the way that I try and think about things, I always want to move things forwards for the better, and I always want to look at what's the next interesting, exciting thing that we can go and do as an organization to help our customers. And I want to understand what is it our customers need that we can go and help resolve through our technology. And in a way, I remember one of our leaders, Derek McCourt, said to me at one point, he was like, "You have one of the most consultative manners that I've worked with." And I guess to a degree that's true. You've got to be really customer obsessed to really understand what it is they're trying to fix. But you've also got to be really aware of what your solutions can deliver and how those things marry up. And regardless of the role that I've done, regardless of the area or industry that I've been focused on, that's always been the mentality that I've taken. How do I do my best work, and how do I drive things forwards? I'm not necessarily as interested in what someone else done and how do I rinse and repeat that. I'm far more interested in how do I drive that next wave of innovation, because that's how you keep driving forwards. All the other things are we're repeating what's been done before, which is great and is really important in terms of building up the base of in the sales world of your business. But actually, it's that next wave of innovation that is always the important thing, because you've got to be looking kind of 12, 18 months down the line. And that's always the mentality that I've taken to it. I think the other thing that's really important is it's never about you. And this is a really weird thing to say, but I look at the successes that I've had in my career, but it's not an I thing, it's a we thing. I've always been part of a really successful team, and the people who I work around, I try to empower them to do their best work. It's not about me going, I'm going to go and do all of this, because you never can. It's a team sport. You've got to be really mindful and aware of everyone else who forms part of that team, and that team isn't just you and your direct peers. That is anyone who needs to be involved in the success of a program project. When I talk about teams, for some of the successful programs that I've had before, that team is Microsoft, that team is partner, that team is absolutely customer. It's all of us working together to get to that end goal, and that I think is really, really important. How do you understand the strengths and indeed the weaknesses that people around you have, and how do you bring the best out of those people around you to be able to progress? So, those are the few things that I would be saying. Think about how you are always driving forwards and not becoming stagnant, and how are you working really effectively in a team to be able to drive towards, whatever the goals are that you have, or that your customer has. Those are the things that are really important. If you do those things well, the rest will come.
That's great advice, Robin. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to inviting you back again in the near future. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Kishore. It's been great fun.
Bye bye.
Cheers.